Well, welcome to another session of Worship Leader Q&A with Jake and Spencer. My name is Jake Goslin. I'm the creator of churchfront.com, helping you lead gospel-centered and tech-savvy worship, and I am joined by the one and only Spencer Cormany, who is the founder of @leadingworshipwell. It's an Instagram account as well as a website, leadingworshipwell.com. So be sure to follow him and check out his website and his blog and all the resources he has for you there. Here is our agenda for today's live stream. So if you are hopping on this stream right now, go ahead and say hey, tell us where you're from, leave a question in the chat box there about worship ministry or tech ministry or any one of those things or a combination of those things, and we're going to keep an eye on the YouTube chat. And then if you have, what we're going to do while we're waiting for those questions, we're actually going to be already starting with some questions that we received via email. So we will start working through those here in a minute. We're going to hang out for about 45 minutes or so, and then, we'll wrap things up. So make sure you get your questions in the chat box earlier if you want us to have time to get to them today. So that's all of our housekeeping. Spencer, how about you go ahead and start us off with the first question?
All right, question number 1 comes from Jesse, and he says, I'm the worship leader at an older church, and their equipment is from the 80s/90s. I took over about a year ago, and one of my goals is to update the sound equipment. I've been to newer churches, and their sound is so clean and balanced, while ours is muddy and unbalanced. What are the essentials to bring to this church into this decade as far as mixers, speakers, etc., without breaking the bank?
Great question, Jesse. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I've been just actually finished and released the Beginner's Guide to Church Sound for students of Worship Leader School. And they're really just going to step back and think about some essential pieces of gear here. And I can't give you a full-on church sound consultation here, so I think the best thing you can do is find a professional in your area who is willing to give you advice and help kind of analyze the acoustics of your room. But the first thing I would actually consider before the gear is the acoustical design of your worship space. This is something that I think worship leaders tend to miss quite often. We forget that the spaces we meet in have their own physics when it comes to acoustics, and the sound bounces off the walls. It causes reverberation and determines how clearly we can hear music, and as well as how clearly we can hear spoken words. So acoustical design is really important. You may need to get some absorption panels in your church. If you clap your hands and you hear just echoing like more than a second long, that might be why you're hearing a lot of muddiness in the sound at your church. So don't necessarily get caught up in the gear too early. But then, assuming your church is kind of a smaller venue, and when I say smaller, I mean less than 500 people, you could consider, when it comes to PA speakers, get some powered PA speakers. You want some powered, like 12-inch top speakers and maybe some 18-inch subwoofers. We use EV speakers at my church. They're really affordable for what they do. And then for a sound system, I always recommend the Behringer X32. It's a very affordable price point for a digital console. And make sure you also pay the extra to get a stage box like the the S32 stage box to go with that mixer. That's going to make all your routing so much easier, sending signal to your speakers, sending monitor mixes to your musicians. So I would recommend that as like the foundation, your X32, S32 stage box, and then the EV powered speakers. And with that setup, with like in-ear monitors and stuff like that, you're really flexible. But I think that's a good starting point for you. I don't want to dive too deep into things. Make sure the acoustical design of your church is done well, so that can help eliminate a lot of the muddiness that you may be hearing.
Yeah, I'd just say, we can give you recommendations, but if you're getting like an installed sound system, definitely go with, don't try to do it yourself. If you're getting speakers hung and stuff, you definitely want to get another opinion on that. I found a question in chat that I like. This is from Sam. He says, how do you know if you have the calling to be a worship leader or music director of a worship team? So what are your thoughts on calling, Jake? Maybe you can share some of your story too.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts on that, and I want to answer this really well. So I'm going to pull up, and actually, if you want to share some thoughts right now,
Yep.
because I have some good thoughts, I just want to pull up the right ones.
Yeah, I'd say definitely, first of all, is gifting. Like, I think sometimes, I think that worship leading has become sort of the thing that everybody wants to do in the church nowadays, and it might just not be right for everyone. So you got to make sure that you have the gifting. So that's not just musically, which is the most obvious, but if you're going to be a worship pastor or music director or whatever you want to call it, you also have to be able to lead people. So know that that is another part of the job as well. It's not just playing music all day. It's also leading people. So you've got to consider that side of it. And then just as far as my own calling, I just saw a lot of doors opened up that pushed me in that direction. So I started off, I went to college for music, business, and technology for a year. And I was like, this is not for me. But at the same time, I got heavily involved in the campus ministry there. So I had plenty of opportunity to serve. And then once I came back home and started going to a different college and continued my education, I had even more chances to serve. So it was like all along the way, I was being pointed to becoming a worship leader just through gifting, number one, but then also through the opportunity to serve and doors being opened up that allowed that to happen.
Yep. And what I was thinking about, because this is something I cover in another one of my courses called the Worship Leader Mindset, kind of an introductory course when it comes to just worship leading in general. And this is thinking about that, what I call the pastoral pillar of worship ministry. And this is something you've already touched on, Spencer, and I think it's really important. And there's a little book. I think it's called Am I Called or something like that. I can't remember the title of it. But this is where some of these questions were inspired from. And the questions this author, tells you to ask are these ones. There's like 6 questions here. And this is more like pastoral ministry in general, but I think a lot of this applies to worship leaders. So, are you called? So the first question you should ask are you a godly person? Are you pursuing a life like Christ's and close relationship to God? Then the second question is, how's your home? Like, are you in a healthy situation with your family relationships, if you're married, or other relationships, that you may have with the family members and friends? Are those things healthy? And then can you sing? Can you actually sing, like, and communicate? Like, do you have the competency to do what a worship leader is required to do? And then can you shepherd? Kind of like Spencer's already alluded to. Can you help lead and guide people spiritually? And then do you love the lost? I think this is something worship leaders should hopefully have a love for, seeing the lost come to Christ. And then finally, the last question is, like, who agrees with this calling? Like, do you have kind of the agreement of those who know you well around you? Do you have the agreement of the local church body, other respected church leaders? Those are the questions that we should be asking when it comes to, am I called to be a worship leader? Those are at least the biblical questions. And in this book, Spencer, did you happen to look up this book?
Yeah, it's by Dave Harvey. It's
Yeah.
called Am I Called? The Summons to Pastoral Ministry by
Yeah.
Dave Harvey.
And he has a lot of, like, scripture references to a lot of these questions, and it helps you think kind of, I think, biblically through this. And it's not like, God is necessarily going to write a sign in the sky for you to be like, you're supposed to be a worship leader. It's not always that obvious, but if you go through these questions, you should have a lot of clarity on whether or not you're called to worship ministry. Very good question.
Yes. Here's another one from the chat. James asks, how much emphasis do you put on hearing and improving congregational involvement? And I'll start off with that one because I talk about that all the time on Leading Worship Well. I put basically all of my energy into that. If I can choose between the worship team sounding really good and the congregation being able to sing along, I will always pick the congregation being able to sing along. So that kind of takes practically two forms. First of all, like, can people sing it range-wise, because oftentimes people on the worship team, hopefully they're a little bit above average musically, which means you have an above average range. So I'll always choose to put it in the range that the congregation can sing and not just what our singers can sing. And then also just artistically too. I like to focus on clarity over art. So I want to make sure that people can understand what they're singing, and also that we aren't doing like anything crazy musically, but that they can follow along.
Yeah, really great insight there. I don't know if I have too much to add. I agree that like the priority should be hopefully encouraging your congregation to participate in worship. So I don't know, sometimes we might be like, oh, I want it to sound like the album or the record. I would definitely advise, against that if that means putting songs in ranges that people can't sing. Like, again, I say this a lot here, but most people do not sing in the range of Tomlin, Whitcomb, Daigle. A lot of these people have phenomenal voices that sound good to listening when you're driving down the car in the radio, but it's really hard for us as worship leaders to sing in that key, unless if you're a super tenor or super alto, then it's hard for the congregation to follow along. So definitely prioritize congregational participation.
One of the things that I love that I've seen recently is like a move towards congregational songs on worship albums. Not so much in the sense of the key, because I still think we have to bring the keys down a lot, but even the arrangement of the songs I think are a lot more congregationally friendly than they have been in the past. I remember watching an interview with I think his name's Daniel Carson, Chris Tomlin's lead guitar player. And he was talking about how he comes up with lead guitar parts for his songs. And I loved what he said, where he was like, I'm a professional musician and I can play crazy stuff on the guitar, but I'm writing guitar parts that are specifically for the people in the church, like that they could play. So some guy who isn't a professional musician, he can sit down and play this guitar part. So I really like that I've seen a move towards that sort of thinking, with Passion and Hillsong and Bethel and Elevation and all of that.
The next question comes from the YouTube comments from Brandy. I have just been hired as the worship fellow at my church. Unfortunately, dealing with the unreliability and difficult personalities from musicians. What's the best way to handle this small talent pool? Spencer?
Are you going to push that out on me?
No. Okay, I can do it. So especially when you, like you just said, you just been hired, so you just inherited a position in a culture that's kind of existed for however long it has that way. I would, number one, have patience. Number two, obviously you don't want to just like start kicking people out or anything like that, because it's just not wise to do when you're new to a position. You need to do a couple things here. And okay, so the reason, well, there's a lot of reasons, but here's what comes to my mind is that now you're placed in a position of leadership and influence, and just because you're given a title of the worship leader and you tell people, hey, show up to rehearsal now, or show up to rehearsal at this date, and hopefully play this date as well. It doesn't mean they're just always going to listen to you because you are now worship fellow at your church. You have to build relationship and rapport with them for them to even care to listen to you, or any opinions or any desires that you have for the worship ministry. So I would do what you can. Just establish a good rapport, a good relationship with your members, even the ones who are harder. Get to know them, ask them a lot of questions about what they do, what they're excited about. Find an appropriate context to do this, whether that's bringing them to lunch or coffee. Just become friends, like not best friends, but just so that they feel like they know you, they can trust you. Then that's when I think you can start asking for better like productivity and performance. I always get this from John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. You get the position, then you have to build a relationship, then you can actually start making improvements and changes from a productive and performance level. In there, I would get to the point where you just make things clear, like especially when you recruit more people, you make it clear to them, if you're going to be a part of this ministry, here's the expectations. If you don't want to do that, then this isn't a good fit for you. So you're clear up front, but it is harder with people who you've inherited in your ministry, and you kind of have to help change the culture. What wisdom do you have, Spencer?
Well, I'll just say I think you covered it pretty well. So I'll just say congratulations to you, Brandy, for being hired as the worship person at your church. That's amazing. We also have somebody else to celebrate because we talked about this on our live stream 2 weeks ago. Joshua asked the question, what are some tips? He said, I'm going to have an interview soon, and he just let us know in the chat that he just got hired at that job. So congrats, Joshua. That's awesome. It's good. So our advice works.
Crab rave dance here going on. I wish I could cue that. I should cue that for celebratory moments. Congrats, Joshua. No, that's awesome, man. So, we'll expect our 10% share of your salary. Now, I'll send you my PayPal address.
Exactly. Hey, let's go back to the questions from the email. Yeah. This is from Joe. Joe asks, what can be done about a piano player who is unable to play chords and only wants to play the full score? So I've definitely dealt with that before. And what he's talking about is essentially you just want to give them like the chord charts, but they want like the full arrangement of everything, like the sheet music and stuff. So I think you've just got to teach them, because typically in worship music you aren't playing like sheet music. You're playing chords because you're playing in a band. You're not playing classical music. So I think you've just got to teach them what that looks like. Luckily, people who can read sheet music, they have a lot of the fundamentals down. So if you can teach them what playing chords looks like, and the way you could do that is just sitting down with them one-on-one, and maybe you don't know how to play the keyboard exactly, but they can figure it out over time. If you're just like play a G here, a D here, a C here, and you've got to give them time to get used to that. But there'll probably be some pushback. So just focus one-on-one, teaching them what that looks like, and be a little bit patient with it.
Yeah, my other tip I would share with this is to use resources like worshiponline.com, worshipartistry.com. I think those are the two ones that come to mind for me, that you could take someone who is a keys player but kind of classically trained and give them those videos, those nice tutorial videos, and they'll see someone playing at a keyboard. And I think they'll get an idea of how a professional worship keyboardist does their thing. It's really not that too complicated, especially for someone who's classically trained. But yeah, they don't, it's a little bit more improvisation. They don't have a roadmap there for them. So great question.
Next question is from Evan in the chat. He said, I'm a media director and want to get some lighting, but we share a church with the First Baptist Church and we don't want to mess with their stuff. So what are the best options? Jake, maybe you can hit on that since you serve in like a portable church. So maybe you know some options about that.
Yeah. So at our church, we have a neat little lighting system. So it's really hard. I'm wondering if I can quickly pull this up for you just so you can see what I'm talking about. But I'll just keep talking here while I'm pulling this up. But the idea is you want to have, the thing with lighting is you want to have good front lighting first. So at our church, we have some trusses that we set up and tear down every week. They're just vertical trusses, so very simple setup. And our front two trusses, we're able to put them like towards the very front of the stage and put some ellipsoidal lights. So ellipsoidal lights are like these nice little spotlights. You have lots of control over the throw of them. And that provides our front lighting. We only have two of them, like one that comes from like this direction on my face and the other one. And it really, we're able to light up like the whole stage really well, whether it's our band members or our pastor that way. So that if your stage is set up the way our stage is, then you may be able to make this work really well. Oh, you know what? I actually realized I have like a bunch of photos that I can pull up real quick for you guys to show you what I'm talking about. And then we have on those trusses as well, we have like LED lights that provide some color backlighting on our stage, and we're able to really just kind of change the overall feel and look of everything. So it looks, I really like it. For, we only have like, I don't know, like an hour, 2 hours to set all this stuff up every Sunday, and we are completely independent. This is a good picture of the school's lighting system, which is good because we have no control like over anything there, and like it can be frustrating because like some days their lighting board doesn't work, so we don't need their stage lights at all. Ideally, we just always tie into their house lights because those are controlled by DMX, and we can do that easily. Okay, so I'm going to try something fancy here. I am going to, in Ecamm Live, I'm going to add the desktop. Oh, look at that. Okay, you guys on YouTube should see in a second here. I'll see it come up on YouTube because everything's delayed. But you should see my desktop now.
Oh, yeah.
Wait,
we're even in a little box there.
Hold on, I was looking at that was trippy. Okay, wait, why is it looking there now? Okay, guys, I apologize. I'm like okay, there we go. So now you see our stage, right? Do you see that, Spencer?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. I hope this works. Okay. I don't break the live stream. Okay. So here is the stage. So then up here, you can see my cursor. This is an ellipsoidal light. It's kind of black. You can't see it. But this is providing, we have one on this side, and then we have one on the other side. You just can't see it. That provides the front light for us. And you can see it's just on this truss. This truss is just on the front corner of the stage. And then around the stage, we have these LED lights that kind of provide color, and we have these little lights in the trusses that light up the trusses different colors. So very simple setup here. And now I'm going to try to figure out how to get rid of those scenes. There we go. Okay, I'm going to get that. That's it. Here, sorry, I'm like trying to do way too many things at one time. So
yeah, you're good. I think, I really like that setup because it's really simple, and it sounds like you're in exactly the same situation that I forget who asked that question. Evan is.
Yeah.
Because you're coming into a school, he's sharing another space with another church, so that way you can have a completely independent system. Yep. So I like that. Let's go back to the email questions real quick. We'll keep moving. Jason asks, I automate lyrics via Ableton. I also use ProPresenter. How can I automate a lyric video to the iMag screens while viewing typed out lyrics on the Confidence monitor? So I guess you're still trying to figure things out here.
Dude, I am like such a struggle bus right now with this stuff. This is me just like trying stuff out on the fly, and this is what happens, guys. So how about you pick one that's not me?
I'll do that, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Primary display.
We'll
okay,
go down to a question from Patrick. Patrick asks, how do you recommend dealing with interpersonal issues that tend to come up in worship ministry? So he's talking about interpersonal issues, and I'm sure that we've all got those on our team. And I literally get DMs on Instagram all the time about people asking me about how to deal with interpersonal conflict on their team, and I essentially always tell them the same thing, and it's just one word: communication. It's so important, and it seems obvious, but I think that oftentimes we skip that simple step of just communicating the problem to the person that we're having a problem with, because it's easy to just sort of store it up on your own and not tell anybody about it, and then complain in your head about how they're not doing what you think they should be doing, but you never actually take the step to tell them about it. So it's not really fair to do that because you harbor all this anger inside, but you've never actually discussed the problem with them. So every time somebody asks me the question, how do I deal with conflict in my team, I always just tell them communication. And I ask them, well, have you actually talked to the person about the problem yet? And usually they say, no, they're not open to talking. And I'm like, well, that's the first step. You've got to talk to them about the problem. Jake, what do you think on that conflict on your worship team?
I didn't listen to a word you just said because I was so flustered by this getting the right thing up. But
beat by technology.
conflict on your worship team. Yeah, yeah, I mean, like, just everybody needs to be adults and like not be afraid to have the hard conversations that need to be had. Always approach conversations in a way that you're not accusing people of things, but just work cooperatively towards peace in these situations. So especially if you're the worship leader needing to like kind of curate, or not curate, but kind of mediate, that's the word I was looking for, between other conflict going on. Always it's biblical to just be true with one another. Get things out in the open. Get rid of elephants in the room. That's all I have to say about that.
That's exactly what I said. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier about how you can automate a lyric video to the iMag screens while viewing typed out lyrics on the confidence monitor. Do you know how to do that, Jake?
That I'd have to look into the details of ProPresenter and the different things you can do. I don't use ProPresenter to that fancy, or I'm not that fancy with ProPresenter, and especially with stage display, because I know you can toggle stage display on or off. But I've run into this problem though, where I've run a lyric video along with a song and I queued it with Ableton, but then with stage display, like you have to have it on or off, and I think though, now that I'm thinking, okay, because I know you can toggle stage display on or off within Ableton Live. So in your confidence monitor, just make sure within that output, whatever output you have in ProPresenter for your confidence monitor for stage display, make sure stage display is enabled, and that should work. Because then as in terms of like, okay, on the main screen you only want to see the video, then maybe there's a way to trigger the video on that main screen, but put like the lyrics underneath the video so you don't see it, because you don't need it. It's a lyric video, so you want to see the special lyrics. That's my brainstorming thought process through this right now. I would actually have to try it myself. Maybe someone else out there has done this and know what exactly is going on. But I would totally believe it's possible, because it seems like so many people do this.
Yeah. Let's go back to the chat. This is from Adam, and he asks, what if the congregation is diverse and not everyone can sing so high or so low? How do you find the medium range? So what's the average range? And Jake, I know that we talk about this all the time, and you say from C to C, right? C4 to C5? That's what we talk about.
Yeah, exactly. I would say the highest I would go, because sometimes there's high notes that you can hit, I think, once in a while, but not like hang out on them all the time. So sometimes I usually find like a D, baritones and mezzo sopranos might be able to hit as their like high note once in a while, but then don't hang out up there. And then on the low end, same thing, that C or D, an octave lower than that. We definitely talked about this a lot in the past. Yeah.
So basically just find the range of the song, like learn the melody of the song on your preferred instrument, guitar, keyboard, bass if you're crazy, and figure out what the range of the song is, and then move the key of the song until the highest note falls below that D or C or whatever you think your congregation can handle. That's the process. Check out our live streams from before, because I think we talk about that pretty much every time we do a live stream.
Yep. Okay, next question came from, I was trying to find, where was Adam's question here? Okay, Frank had the next question. Hey, how would you train a young worship leader how to improve their stage presence and their capacity to lead the band? I would give the young worship leader, number one, I would give them a lot of reps, there's sometimes some things in life you just have to do a lot to get better at, and we as leaders who are more experienced have to be okay with sacrificing some of the polished excellence quality of it for the sake of them getting experience, or else they'll never learn anything. Hopefully there's an avenue where maybe you have a youth ministry that they can get a lot of experience leading in, because again, the bar is not quite as high. For Sunday morning worship, you probably do want things to be a bit better. But in the end, though, either way, I think you have to just really provide opportunities for them to get lots of experience. Sometimes, if I have a younger worship leader with me, I will just tell them like, hey, learn all these songs and like be able to sing them as if I were not there. We'll even like give them a mic and like they can start singing them and really developing those skills. But we don't have to put them through the house system that loud. They can be more in a backup role. So that's something that I've definitely done before. Any other thoughts to add there?
Yeah, I'm in the process right now of training up two student worship leaders. So they're both in high school, like ninth and 11th grade. And basically my process is I want to give them safe spaces where they can fail and it won't be like it's not leading on Sunday morning. I don't tell them you're leading the whole service on Sunday morning. We don't start there. We start really small, and it pushes them a little bit each time, and it works up to till eventually one day they'll be able to lead on Sunday morning. So some of those safe spaces that I'm talking about is like, number one, it starts for my team at worship team rehearsals. So I'll have them lead our worship team in worship at a worship team rehearsal, because I think that's a really safe space. Like, you're working with a small group of people that you trust, and these people know, hey, this person's still learning, and so they aren't critiquing them. So it starts there, and then from there we typically go to our Wednesday night gatherings where they'll help me lead. That time we do like 3 songs, so they'll help me lead during that time, and then from there maybe they'll lead 1 song on Sunday morning, and then after that they'll lead multiple songs on Sunday morning and talk in between. So that's an abbreviated version of my process of training up young worship leaders.
Awesome, man. All right, moving on to the next question. It comes from Christine IC. What are your mix priorities when mixing in-ear monitors? And do you do mono or stereo? Great question. My mixing priority on in-ear monitors is I need to hear my vocals really well. I need to hear my acoustic pretty well. Not too loud, but just enough to know I'm playing the right chords. Then I want to hear lots of click and guide, so I stay on point. And then I want to hear some backing tracks, kind of fill it in. Obviously, the other vocalists as well. And then I like drums. I like lots of drums in my mix, right, Luke? I know he's on here, probably still watching. Luke's my drummer. So I like to have a good beefy sound to the drums in there. I've been using on a weekly basis the Soundcaster app, the app that runs on my phone, streams Wi-Fi over to my phone. I'm going to make an update video about this soon, tell you more, but it's been working great, and I love how it's stereo. And this comes in handy when you have a lot of vocalists in your band and you want to like make your mix really clear and hear what everybody's doing. So when I'm on stage, generally, if I'm like standing in the middle, then I have one vocalist on one side and one on the other, I'll just pan their voices accordingly to whatever side they're on, and it creates so much separation and it sounds so clear. That's why I'm a huge advocate for stereo mixes when you can, but obviously it's a bit more expensive, and it's not as simple as setting up a mono mix. But yeah, that's how I go about building my in-ear mix.
Yeah. And I think the mistake that most people make is like they just try to hear everything, right? Mm-hmm. They just think they have to hear everything. But in a monitor mix, you really only want to hear what you really need to hear. And that depends on what part you're playing in the band. Like if you're the bass player, then you really need to hear the drums, or vice versa. But maybe the singer doesn't need as much bass in their mix. All right.
All right. Want to keep going on? Let's keep going through the YouTube questions here. How far in advance do you schedule your teams, and do you have a time where you exclusively work on new songs outside of normal practice? Thinking about doing this with our teams. How far advanced? As a rule of thumb, I try to get scheduling out like a quarter at a time, but sometimes it's like a month at a time. Ask Luke. Sometimes it's like a week out at a time. So do what I say, not what I do sometimes when it comes to this. But ideally, like I have some musicians who maybe they're just harder to schedule. I'll try to get them on my calendar or in planning center months out from now. I would love to get it so it's like we're always a quarter out. Rarely is it ever less than a month out of scheduling. And then the other question was about working on.
Time?
Yeah. So, no, not currently. Our team's done a good job at when we have a new song, everybody listens to it on Planning Center, and they work on it at home. They learn it. Yeah, I can see how this could come in handy though for some situations. It could be a great way to make sure everybody's on the same page and they know the new music. So I would give it a try though. Maybe make it a fun day, like have a long rehearsal, learning new songs, and order some pizzas or something.
Yeah, I think the other part of that conversation, though, is like, I guess it depends where your church is at, but you don't want to be introducing a bunch of new songs at the same time. So if you're just working on one new song, like we've talked about before, the expectation is that you come into rehearsal with your part learned. So that applies to songs that you've been doing for a while or new songs. So if there's like a guitar part in this new song that your guitarist needs to learn, like they should know that before they come to rehearsal. And then once you're at rehearsal, yeah, we don't personally have a specific time to work on new songs. We just do it at our rehearsal because our rehearsal involves a little bit more time than just running through the songs for Sunday.
Awesome. Let's go to the next email question. And I'm just like going over here. I'm like, I don't remember any of these questions, so we're just like reading them as is. Hi Jake, thanks for opening a door to questions. Are there any decent alternatives to MainStage that run on Windows? Yes, Ableton Live runs on Windows. You can get some great Ableton Live patch templates at sundaysounds.com. My friend David, he's got a lot of cool stuff over there, so go check that out. If you're a Windows user, use Ableton. If you're a Mac user, I would recommend using Ableton. MainStage, it's good. You just need a powerful Mac to run it for it to work well. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Evan is asking for our email addresses. Just head over to our websites, Evan, if you want that, churchfront.com or leadingworshipwell.com. They're both on there.
Yep. Hello at churchfront.com is mine.
Spencer at leadingworshipwell.com is mine.
Everybody send Spencer a bunch of spam emails now.
Don't do it. I'll block you. All right, this is from Warren. He asks, how do you deal with busy, quote-unquote, musicians? It's hard for me to decide whether it's me just being a picky music snob or if they really are overplaying and taking away from the worship experience. All right, I see what you're saying. So it's not just that they're busy as in they have a lot to do, but that they're playing way too much. So I think there's a balance because we definitely have a tendency to be picky music snobs, as you say, but I think that an element of that is good because you want your team to serve with excellence. So from there, it really comes down to just teaching. I think a lot of church musicians come from a background of not necessarily playing in a band. At least that's what I've experienced, especially in smaller churches. They aren't band musicians. They might be playing by themselves, and they don't understand that whenever you play with a band, you have to really cut down on what you do because now suddenly you've got 4 or 5 other musicians. So I think it's just teaching that basically for every musician that you're playing with, you have to play that percentage less. So for example, if you were playing by yourself, you'd play 100%. If you're playing with 2 people, you play 50%. If there's 3 people in the band, you play 33.33333333 repeating percent. So I think it's just teaching them the basics of arranging a song.
Awesome. Cool. So the next question comes from Daha Havid. Hey, Jake, I've seen your reviews of in-ear monitors, and I've been considering replacing my 215s. I'm guessing short 215s. Would you recommend the KZs? I don't know. The KZs, I think they're cool for the price, but I think the 215s, short 215s, are like a better, long-lasting, maybe better, maybe not better sounding, but I feel like the quality is there. They're just going to last you longer, and it's not going to fall apart. KZs, they're just like cheaply made, and again, you get what you pay for. So that's why I'm not like all excited about recommending them. But if you can afford $100 for a new pair of 215s, or maybe upgrade to like the 315s, get some used, have that extra driver, a little bit more bass response, then I would go for that.
Keep the questions coming in chat, guys. We'll get to them. Sam just asked, what is the best way of making your own backing tracks or getting the official ones? So I think if you want the official ones, basically multitracks.com is the place to go. Is that correct, Jake?
Yeah, and loopcommunity.com.
And Luke.
Multitracks has more, they have more selections of the master tracks. Those are the official tracks that come straight from the labels. But yeah, you'll want to check out both those sites. And then Loop Community also has their premium tracks that their studio musicians make, and it's cool because they're cheaper than the master tracks, and in my opinion, they sound just as good for the environment that we're using them in. But yeah, then you can make your own tracks as well.
Do you think it's worth making your own backing tracks? What do you think on that?
Um,
Like the
for
time
me,
that you're going to put into it?
for me, no. I think if you wanted to make your own backing tracks and then, well, okay, so we have budget to buy tracks. So for us and for my position, no, it's not worth putting the time in because I would rather allocate my time towards other things. And those tracks sound amazing if you can just use those. But yeah, if you want to trade some of your time, make tracks, it's fun producing music if you like doing that. That'll save you some money, and then you could even distribute those tracks on loopcommunity.com legally and make some money off of that. Kind of get a return, more of a return for your time on that project. So I think it's totally up to you in whatever scenario you are in.
Yeah, I skipped a question back here, so I'll go back to it. This is from Russell. He asks, what enables you to collaborate fluidly and effectively with church leadership? So I think that it's very important to have a good relationship with your senior pastor at the very least, and then anyone else that you have in church leadership. So for me, that just looks like regularly meeting with them and talking about the vision of the church and reviewing what happened at your worship gatherings. Like after every Sunday, ask the question, what happened, what was good, what was bad, what can we do better the next time? So regular meetings.
Yep, I just echo that because every Tuesday afternoon I have about it's usually like a half hour call. It could be just 10 minutes though sometimes. It's a quick call with my pastor to just check up on things, kind of see where we're at on whatever projects we're working on, really just to stay in the loop. I know for me, especially being part-time, it's easy for me to like not think much about the church stuff outside of my planning that I do every few hours a week because I'm mostly focused on church front stuff here. So especially when worship leading is not your full-time thing, I think it's actually important to have at least a quick checkup call with your pastor on a weekly basis, and then you can know what sermons is he working on, like what's the topic of the week. Like it helps the planning process a lot.
Looks like we skipped Gustav's question.
Okay.
He says that he plays drums, and let me just read what he says. I usually play the drums, but I am the one prepping and organizing. My singer doesn't really want to have the pastoral role when leading, and so I'm thinking to get a microphone into the drum cage and have myself lead in prayer and such. I think that's an interesting situation and something that I've dealt with on my team too, where you want somebody else to lead. They feel comfortable leading the musical portion, but not praying and speaking transitions and stuff. So I think that you can definitely fill in for the time being. I don't think that the person speaking always needs to be the person who's leading the song, but I would definitely try to move them towards a position where they can fulfill those roles too, because I think it's only going to strengthen your team. So we had one of those youth singers on my team. She sings, and she sang songs for a while, and I would always pray after the songs so she wouldn't have to do it. But over time, eventually, I sat down with her and we worked through, this is what praying during a service looks like, and she got more comfortable, and now she's doing all of that. So move people into that position.
Austin, I saw your question, man. So to move our microphone stands or pedals off the stage, right now we just don't have that many things to move, so we just grab them and move them. And we usually have good transitional points, like at the end of our first worship set, our children's pastor, family pastor comes up to kind of do the announcements and stuff, and that's when, I tell people, go ahead and sit down. I grab my stand, I move over to the side. Sometimes I put my loop-to-miss pedal because that's the only pedal I'm using right there because I'm just playing acoustic. So I have that actually by the drum cage, and I'm not really fiddling with pedals a lot. I'm honestly not a huge fan of fiddling with pedals in worship. That's probably why I'm not a huge fan of playing electric guitar that much in worship. So yeah, we don't have any fancy rig there. And then when we come back out, we have like a blackout between the pastor saying let's stand and worship, and then the start of the song at the end of the service. So yeah, that's how we make those transitions. And with that said, Spencer, did you have any questions? You're dying. Other questions you wanted to cover right now?
I think we're good.
So with that said, guys, we are going to land this plane. And at the end here, I want to do something cool because I finally figured out this live streaming thing. Look at this. I wanted to chat with you guys about Worship Leader School, and I've just been really excited about this because we've been releasing some new courses. So at worshipleaderschool.com, you can check out the course library here, the available courses we got going for you. I just released this one, the Beginner's Guide to Church Sound and the Mixing Masterclass. So this one's got some like super in-depth training. It starts at like beginner basics of like, here's how you build a church sound system. And then down here, it's like, okay, here's how the mixing console works. So you understand signal processing, routing, and even recording with your mixing console. And then down here's the Mixing Masterclass. This is like to make you mix basically like a pro, and you can kind of obviously like get beside or maybe have a watching party or something like this with your church sound tech and work through these trainings. Like these are each about like it's anywhere from a half hour to like over an hour each of these trainings. And my friend Spencer, who's a sound engineer, my other friend Spencer, dives deep into mixing and the nuance of all that stuff that happens. So with the course library, of course, my whole Ableton training, all that fun stuff is in here. And then we have the community forum as well, so you can interact with other worship leaders, join all the fun discussions that we've got going here. So that is Worship Leader School, and I want you guys to go head on over and check that out. To join, it's an application process, so you're going to sign up for a time to hop on a call with me. We'll make sure that Worship Leader School is the right fit for you. So head on over there right now. If you're interested in joining, you can learn more about the site and you can apply, and we can get something scheduled on the calendar for next week. We can meet each other one-on-one. Spencer, what do you have for folks who want more support as they plan and lead?
Yeah, you can definitely head over to Instagram and follow me at Leading Worship Well. I post a new practical worship leading tip over there every day. You can also go to my website, leadingworshipwell.com. I've got a ton of blog posts over there, like over 200, about any worship leading question that you can think about. Basically, just search for it in the search bar. And while you're there, you can also download a free audio training that I put together called 5 Tips to Instantly Improve Your Worship Leading. So I take you through 5 things that are pretty small, but if you implement them, then they will improve your worship leading. It's that easy. So head over to leadingworshipwell.com and pick that up.
There you go, guys. Thanks so much. It's really fun hanging out with you and hearing a little bit more about your worship leading context and what you guys are up to these days. And just really appreciate you supporting the YouTube channel here. Subscribe if for some reason you aren't already yet subscribed. Smash that like button. There's 36 people on right now, so I should see 36 likes on this video once we're done. And yeah, stay tuned for more live streams. We're trying to get in the habit of doing this every single week. So with that said, have a great weekend, especially leading worship at your church. Keep up the great work, and we will see you next time.